Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Conversation with Alan series. I'm Alan Locker, and I'm the child of two Holocaust survivors. I created this series to have honest discussions about the rise of anti-Semitism and hate, with high hopes that it leads to conversations that make us all think about our place in history and to inspire collective action to eradicate hate in all its forms. Conversations like this are more crucial now than ever in the face of rising anti-Semitism worldwide. Writer, director, and producer Mark Bennett and his co-writer and director Tim Roper invite us to explore humanity's most essential question: when will we truly say never again and commit to breaking the cycle of dehumanization? At the heart of their powerful new documentary For the Living is the harrowing story of Marcel Zielinski, a 10-year-old Holocaust survivor who, after spending 2 years in a death camp, is liberated by incoming Russian forces from Auschwitz-Birkenau in January of 1945. Marcel then embarked on a 60-mile journey by foot through a war zone in search of his surviving family. Decades later, Marcel's journey was honored by Ride for the Living, an international cycling event where 250 cyclists from around the world traced Marcel's liberation path. This powerful tribute serves as both a historical commemoration and a modern call to action, urging us to nurture empathy and compassion. With their film, Mark and Tim ask us to reflect: how do we dehumanize in an era marred by dehumanization? How do we shift from merely memorializing the dead to reawakening compassion for the living? Please help me welcome to the locker room and Conversations with Alan, Tim Roper and Mark Bennett. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having us. Thank you.
The documentary, as I told you backstage, it is incredibly powerful, educational, and truly so incredibly timely. I'd love to learn how you first learned about the Ride for the Living.
Well, our executive producer, Melinda Goldrich, is a cyclist and a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. And she became aware of this event in Poland, created and hosted by the Krakow JCC. And she was fascinated by it in its uniqueness to think about a bike ride commemorating the Holocaust and raising money for the Holocaust survivors that they take care of at the JCC. And she was so intrigued with it that we started to look into possibly doing a film to explain this and showcase this amazing event. And that's how we became interested in it. And I think Tim and I's curiosity was both piqued by the uniqueness of this event, the meaningfulness of this event, the really powerful nature of this event, and also the metaphor it has for all the other genocides that have happened throughout history, and the need for this to shine a light on that and bring it to people's attention in the hope of avoiding these atrocities from happening over and over again.
Education about these events is genocide, really, not the bike ride necessarily, but yes, is so important. At first, you were going to do the documentary just on the ride. What led to expanding it to focus on genocide basically around the world?
Well, we started talking, Mark and I and Lisa, Effress, our producer, started talking about it and talking about the particular route that they followed. And when it came to light that this route actually traced the liberation path of this 10-year-old boy, it became fairly obvious that when you're riding in someone's footsteps, you're taking part in a collective act of empathy, which was, was quite a buzzword back in, well, it has been for years, but especially around 2019 when we were getting ready to actually embark on the chronicling the ride itself. And then when you juxtapose that to the counterbalance of empathy, which is the extreme opposite part of human nature, dehumanization, which is part and parcel of everything that led to Auschwitz, and the depravity and cruelty and sadism that took place in Auschwitz. So very quickly, these two endpoints, Auschwitz-Birkenau and the Jewish Community Center in Krakow, became symbolic of dehumanization and empathy. And I'll mention there that the Krakow JCC not only was a place of light and rebirth of Jewish life 60 miles from Krakow, but also became a place where they were sheltering and giving aid to hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees of all faiths, not just Jewish people. So they were technically using what they had learned from their ancestors' experiences in the Holocaust to try and help rehumanize this flood of humanity that was coming across the border into Poland. So both of these things are very symbolic, and the ride itself became just a really big allegory for sort of what we're all going through as the human race from centuries.
You both have connection to the Holocaust yourselves. How important was it to you guys to tell this story, to shed a light on genocide, to shed a light on the ride, and marry both of them together?
It's a great question, Alan. For me, I lost a lot of family in the Holocaust, so it's always been something that has been a part of my upbringing and my soul and my being. And I think it's really important when you see what's going on in today's world. I think it's absolutely paramount that, we make never again, not just a cliche, but something that we really can stand behind. And I think, as you mentioned before, education is our best weapon of helping avoid these atrocities in the future. And so we set out to bring that ride, which is the through line of the movie, but expand into this greater universe of why do we still have genocide happening almost 80 years after the worst mass murder in history? And what can we do about it? And as Tim mentioned, empathy is what is our premise, is that our best weapon of defense against things like dehumanization that mostly lead to genocide.
Yeah, and my connection is twofold. It's my wife Lisa, who's our producer, had a lot of family members massacred in what is now Ukraine by the Einsatzgruppen, which is the mobile killer teams that used to go into villages. This is all prior to the train cars bringing people very efficiently and horrifically into Auschwitz. But there's the town of Shumsk, which is a pretty notorious massacre. She lost dozens of family members there, and found out about it in the last several years. But it's become quite a it's interesting how it comes to light when you start looking into genealogy and things like that. Myself, I'm the one non-Jewish member of this whole team. And I studied the Holocaust very early, like in high school, and really went deep in college in a class called Literature of the Holocaust. And Literature of the Holocaust had stories of the Holocaust through different art forms: poetry, short stories, music, lyrics, of course, film, of course, nonfiction books and fiction books. But when you approach it through the arts, you really begin to associate yourself with individuals in history, and the emotional turmoil they went through, watching people all around them die. Elie Wiesel's book Night was one of those, and dozens of others. But that I became very, very attached to this historical event just as a fellow human being, thinking like,
I wish I had that class.
It was fun. It was, well,
should have been mandatory.
Yes. Agreed. You mentioned Ukraine. For me, my parents, my mom died in 2007, and my dad many years before that, so they haven't been around. And then Charlottesville happened, and it made me want to speak up because I had never seen anything like that. And then watching the Ukrainian war unfold, I felt like I finally saw with my own eyes what my parents had lived through, really. Like, it was the visuals of the Ukrainian war and all of that was very eye-opening to, I think, what we only see in pictures really from World War II.
Well, what's important, one of the important points about the Holocaust, I've always postulated that this is a film that involves the Holocaust, this is not a typical Holocaust film.
Right. Yeah.
Because while it is a big piece of the narrative, it's really about human nature and how these patterns continue, and they repeat and they repeat and they repeat, or they're at least, as Timothy Snyder said, they're echoes of a previous generation. But what it does, our hypothesis put forth, and it is proven out, is that these are not limited to certain ethnic groups, both the victims and the perpetrators. It's not limited to certain ethnicities or spirituality or national boundaries. It's not like, the Holocaust was a German thing. These Germans were human beings that got sucked into a dehumanizing storyline. And the same thing happened in Rwanda, and it happened centuries before that, and it happened in Cambodia and Bosnia and on and on and on. So it's really it kind of sort of provokes the question, genocide and dehumanization, is it more a feature or a bug of humanity? Because it is so perpetual. It just keeps coming and coming and coming. So one of our things is, yeah, you've got to finally say never again. And this time you got to mean it.
It's true. What was it like to meet Robert Desmond, who I believe is credited with inspiring the Ride for the Living, and Marcel Zielinski himself, who I believe is 89 today and still alive? What was their reaction to you wanting to do this film?
Well, I think both Tim and I were both in awe of both of these people, both in what they've done to bring this ride to fruition, but also this wonderful relationship between this older man and this younger boy, and
who are not related, did not know each other at all.
Not at all.
Ride basically brought them together.
And Robert is one of the originators of the ride. Marcel joined shortly after, but they never imagined having an actual survivor of Auschwitz on the ride. It's just that Marcel turned out to be a cyclist. But what's interesting to me also is Marcel, like so many other Holocaust survivors, wanted to put the past behind him and didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to teach about it, didn't want to get into it over and over again. But when he heard about the ride and he joined the ride, and he figured, if I could walk that 60 miles from Auschwitz to Krakow JCC, I could do it on a bike. And the interconnectivity of these two people, there you see them. It was just really remarkable. The carrying on of that knowledge, of that ethos and everything. And, as one of our main interviewees in the film, Michael Berenbaum, the scholar and one of the founders of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, he said, going on the ride or going through Auschwitz, because the day before the ride, there's a tour of Auschwitz. And to be able to tour Auschwitz with a survivor like Marcel is unprecedented and unbelievable. And he compared it to 1 minute to midnight, that where these people are in their last years. So to have that is an enormous privilege. And for us to be able to document that was a true honor. Really, I think, is one of the things that makes the film even that much more powerful, that you're seeing things that have never been done, never been filmed before.
To your question about what it's like to meet these guys.
Yeah, and I know you were nervous, right, to interview him?
Certainly, yeah. Mark and I divided and conquered on this. He interviewed Robert. I've come to know Robert really, really well. We talk all the time now. I went to Montreal to interview Marcel Zielinski, and I was very nervous because I had, I'd read many accounts. I'd watched lots of testimony on the USC Shoah Foundation library. But, as a young person, or relatively young compared to him, you have to be one of the biggest sensitivities is that you're going to say something or imply something that takes for granted their survival or is insensitive in any way, because my God, what a harrowing experience. And I didn't know any of the details until we truly sat down in front of a camera. But he's not a effusive guy, Marcel. He's not, he doesn't want to share any more than absolutely necessary. as Mark mentioned, he does do testimony now and he does do education. But asking him just details of his journey and details of things he saw in Plazov, which is the camp featured in Schindler's List with Eamon Goff. And you just never know what's going to be a breaking point for a person as well. He's seen things no human should ever see. And you just always wondering if the next question is going to take them down into a dark place. He did quite well. He was unabashedly emotional, which we have no problem with. I mean, it merits that. But yeah, I was incredibly nervous. Probably the most nervous I've ever been interviewing another person.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think of my parents who did the show where my sister and I encouraged them to do it. And, a stranger was interviewing them. And definitely, watching it, you could see certain things that triggered, those responses. Was there a message that either of them were concerned with, Robert or Marcel, about conveying?
Robert's really big into Holocaust education. And one of the reasons he loves this film, if I may say so, is that actually a lot of the points we make in the film, coincidentally, were things that he had been conveying to his friends that he was trying to, he did that 1,200-mile bike ride on his own. Just the very beginning of the film. It's a really nice setup called the Liberation Trail from Westminster Abbey all the way to Auschwitz and then Krakow, going through all of these World War II sites, some of them having to do with the Holocaust, most of them having to do with battles, including D-Day and on and on and on. But one of his big points in starting the ride is it was more of a message about humanity and what we're capable of on both ends. We're capable of this incredible compassion and riding in the footsteps of other people, but we're also capable, every single one of us, of these horrific acts. They just have to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and the wrong influence. So he's a big humanist, and he was glad that we captured that.
Well, the other thing you captured is their incredible friendship, a masterclass on empathy. What was it like to watch them interact? I mean, they almost seem like father and son, and they are strangers who came together.
More like brothers. But that's interesting. You said a masterclass in empathy, because that is a great description of it. And watching that relationship evolve through the movie, and as filmmakers, to be able to interview both of them, even with the sensitivity of the subject matter and wanting to be not wanting to say anything wrong, I think I was really moved by how much they both were willing to share with us and open their hearts and lives and their through their stories of something that when you hear that story told firsthand, it's really, really powerful, and it really allows you to be there and visualize what it was like for both of them going through that. And their relationship was very special, and I think it's one of my favorite threads of the film.
I was going to say, and the way you wrap it up with them is really leave it to the viewer to watch it and experience it, because it's absolutely beautiful.
One of the secrets to doing that is sometimes you want to capture a moment, but sometimes you want to just let the camera go. You want to let it go early, and you want to let it go late. And you capture some of the most authentic, touching moments when you just let it roll. And these people are in the environment together. They know there's a camera there, but it's not reality TV. It's very, very different, because they honestly, well, I don't want to give anything away, but they had
because it really is.
Let's put it that way.
I will say one thing, and we haven't touched on this much in our other interviews, but it's unique to co-direct a documentary with somebody. So this originally was a much smaller story, and it grew into a much bigger story. And I can honestly say I couldn't have done it without Tim and his, incredible knowledge of history and his unique curiosity. But also it made, like he mentioned before, we were able to divide and conquer And, he would be in Quebec filming Marcel. I was in Krakow filming the other half of a conversation. So it really, made doing this much easier and more enjoyable. And also, it's so great to have somebody to really bounce ideas off of. And, we spent so many hours filming and then hundreds of hours in the editing room. If you don't get along, you're toast. But I think we really, it was,
I think creativity together, ideas come, but also unique that Tim has the education of the Holocaust, because not every director does. I mean, you really studied it and knew and sort of telling this.
His knowledge of history was essential to making this film work.
Wow.
Well, trust me, I had a basic underpinning knowledge of all of these incidents that we cover in the film, but truly it took a lot of research before, during, and after to get into the details. And testimony is an invaluable thing. Again, USC Shoah Foundation has a wealth of testimony of several genocides. And I studied Cambodia, actual survivors recounting their events, Bosnia, Armenia, Rwanda, most certainly. And there was, we always love this image because we think it really captures a lot of the hypothesis, whereas never again has become this mantra almost. I don't want to disrespect the use of it, but let's be honest, it's used a lot. And right. The fact that it has to be used and recycled so much is a pretty sad testimony on the trajectory of mankind right now.
I'd like to point out one thing on that slide, Alan, is that if you notice all of the dates there, but the one that is not having a completion date is Darfur. And that was really interesting for us because, we wanted as filmmakers to make a point at the end of the film to say, this is still going on. And we were going to originally have Darfur covered in the movie to show an example of a genocide that is still going on today. But when when Russia invaded Ukraine, we thought that was even more relevant because it was much more in the public domain and on the news and in everybody's consciousness. So we kind of decided to focus on Ukraine because it was so much more immediate. But Darfur, as in that cartoon, is still going on as well. So it's interesting that it's one of the points we try to make in the film.
I mean, we're not learning.
Yeah, we have. I've come up with my own cliche, and that is numbers make us numb, and that's absolute truth. Is that the beginning of the film very much is a commentary on the indifference that we have to these mass numbers of human casualties when it comes to genocide. When you say 6 million, no one can really even visually comprehend that.
Right.
So empathy has we all know empathy has a bias and it has limits. But when you get past the number, I think scientists would say 100, it really starts to fall off, especially when people don't look like you, don't speak like you, don't worship like you, don't come from customs that you recognize. But when it gets into 6 million, it's just a blob in the back of your mind. So you have to concentrate on individuals like Anne Frank. That's why that story is so rich in human history. That it's a face that you can attach to it. It's a human experience. She's a diary with her own thoughts and feelings and inspirations. I think education's catching up in that regard. There are a lot of classes now, like the classrooms that we documented, that are teaching things like citizens throughout history or individuals in history, whether it be Harriet Tubman or someone that's just completely obscure. Ken Burns does a fantastic job at that in all of his series, where they'll go high level, high altitude on all these major events, but then they'll drill back down into an individual that lives in a certain locality that went through this aspect of the story, and another one over here and another one over here. And then they have people, doing their voices. We tried to capture that in our own way by doing second person narration, which puts you in the place of a 10-year-old Cambodian girl, 8-year-old Rwandan boy, and so forth, without, I wouldn't say inconvenience, but without the slow pace of testimony, which we would probably have a 7-hour film if we depended on all testimony.
What was it like shooting the actual ride?
Well, that
And this is
was
an amazing shot, by the way.
yeah. We had originally we thought, okay, 1 or 2 cameras, a couple of interviews, powerful ride, but that was it. But when we got to Poland and were scouting it, and we saw what really 60 miles meant, and the magnificent journey through the Polish countryside, we really started to think that to really put the audience in the ride, to feel like you're one of the riders, we really needed to go all out. And again, thankfully, we had great executive producers that believed in the vision and were willing to, expand the budget to accommodate us. But we had, a number of different cameras. We had guys on motorcycles with cameras shooting off the back of motorcycles, off scooters. We had GoPros, we had drones, we had stationary cameramen along the ride. It was a very complicated and intricate dance, but with all the goal of to really put you in the seat of one of those riders, and to kind of give you the feeling of what it was like. And we were really lucky. We had some amazing cinematographers and cameramen that really contributed to making that visual part of it. And it was also the bike ride in itself. The motion of the ride is very symbolic of the journey. So we really wanted to capture that in as much detail and variety of different angles and perspectives, and give it a real sense of emotion.
Well, it's a balance of scope and intimacy, really, is what it is. I mean, you want to get at a bird's eye view to give you an idea of the mass of humanity, the 250 people that were involved in this singular event, but also you get in very tight and you can start focusing on individuals and what they're going through, and whether they're finding it challenging or what's going through their mind. And then we interview them on the side of the road at one of the rest stops. But yeah, intimacy, emotion, balanced with big scope and big high altitude, both of physically, but of history as well.
And I believe that 2024 was their 10th, right? I think they started in 2014.
Yes. 2014 was the first year. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, the pandemic intervened.
Oh, yeah.
The virtual world for a year or 2 years. I can't remember now. But the year that takes place in our film is 2019. It was a very singular, big deal year, because there was another survivor in the story as well. I don't want to give that away, but
yeah,
he's even older than Marcel.
Yeah. Yeah. That was amazing when they shared his age too. So that was great. You touched on the research. I believe you said backstage 918 photos and clips. What was the research like? I mean, you're telling the story of genocide and all of those on that cartoon image. How do you, where do you go for all that information?
Well, it's a combination of stock and then just sleuthing through the web. When you know the intimate details of the story, you had to write the narration first. But like when the narration was based on testimony to a degree, when you know the rise and fall of the story and the tension points, then you start imagining how that plays out visually. Then you want to have a lot of options for every beat. So you're probably going to have 6 or 8 visual options for just a phrase or a sentence of narration. And then you start to narrow down. But it was grueling is one of the words. It's grueling, and I have to be honest, it's quite dispiriting, because you're looking through a lot of dark content, whether it's, dead bodies in Rwanda, which obviously no one would enter dead bodies in Rwanda as your Google search, but are your Getty search, but you start to get into the details, and then you have to ask very detailed questions. And I've often kind of halfway joked with the team that I'm sure there's a Department of Homeland Security file on me based on all
what you've been searching
of the search language that was put through there from early Native Americans and slave trade all the way through Ukraine. It's dark stuff by design, but it's there. It's there for a reason. It's there to show that we're all capable of this. Again, regardless of background or ethnicity, we're all capable of these kinds of acts, or the temptation to commit these kinds of acts, but we're all also capable of the other end of the spectrum, which is the empathetic side.
I will also say, though, that it's one of the most exciting parts of filmmaking for me as a director, and I know Tim shares that feeling, is that it's an exhaustive and painstaking search for the right images, whether it's dark images or just images to help tell the story. But it's so exciting, building this visual tapestry and to support your narrative. It's really exciting, and it's also a journey of discovery, because you need a shot here of Nuremberg, and you start looking, and it's not until you find it, you maybe find 10 shots and you go, oh, that's the one. So it's a really fun and exciting process, and it's an exhausting one, but it's also very inspiring. It's one of the parts of documentary filmmaking that I love the best, is that you're really pulling from all these different sources, whether it's filming of a live event to an interview, to still photographs, to news footage, to magazine clips, to video footage. It's endless. And then figuring a way to weave that all together so that it works cohesively. It's a very exciting process.
I love that. You also bring the narrative of the film to life with incredible interviews and commentary from academics like Timothy Snyder, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and an incredible interview with Ben Ferencz, who prosecuted Nazis in the Nuremberg war crime trials in the late 40s. What, in your opinion, do these interviews and their commentary add to the film?
Well, they give you context from a historical point of view, certainly, because we did a very intentional job of weaving between the intimate and emotional and the more detached academic, high-level historical review of it. But Michael Berenbaum, for instance, was a big inspiration for the second-person description of experience. When he was describing, I believe it was the day after we documented the Auschwitz tour, we sat in a little enclave in Krakow, and both Mark and I were there. And the way he is able to describe a day in the life of an Auschwitz prisoner, and what it's like to go through every step of the chain from arrival to incineration, frankly, and all the dehumanizing and sadistic things that happen to you in between. He would always describe that as you, all your possessions are taken. You're led into a shower. You're told to hang up your clothes on a hook. You. But Snyder and some of these other folks, we knew we needed a little more. I had read a lot of Timothy Snyder's writings, and we knew we needed some more context and points of view on why the Holocaust happened and what it was about, not only Hitler, but people who followed Hitler. How did they rationalize that in their own mind? We can always say, well, they were evil, and that doesn't really capture what truly happened there. There was a methodology to their evil, but I think Berenbaum and Snyder come together late in the film to really dimensionalize what is it about the Jewish influence that was found to be so incredibly threatening to German people, or at least those who believe in this purity idea. And it has more to do with influence than it does what's in their blood, or any of these other tropes that came out that they never were able to pin down to science. So stuff like that. we always knew we would find triggers that would take us conversationally or linguistically into these past events. But we were very fortunate. We didn't choreograph that very well. We didn't mean to choreograph it ahead of time. It just happened in the edit, where when Timothy Snyder talks about letting people down, we know, well, that's a natural trigger to going to Bosnia-Herzegovina, where the United Nations very conspicuously let all those people down.
I've just started following him. I like him a lot, Timothy Snyder.
Oh, he's been
very
busy lately. Yeah.
We were very fortunate to have that all-star cast. Almost everybody we went to jumped on board right away. And I think it's really gives it a really multifaceted perspective of this story and this information. And you mentioned Ben Ferenz, at 100 years old, this man was, agreed to be interviewed by us. Not at first. He turned us down at first, but he said he was too busy.
At 100.
I was like, told him, can't take no for an answer, that we have to have him. But he had just done a major documentary about his life called Prosecuting Evil. And then he was in another movie about genocide called Watchers of the Sky. And he was just on 60 Minutes is where I saw him. And he basically turned us down, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. And he ended up giving us an hour, which went over. But, the magnitude of this cast of interviewees that we had that came on board to really, express their knowledge and point of view of this story and all the different facets of it. I think we were very, very fortunate and extremely grateful.
And there's powerful statements and questions. The gentleman you mentioned from the Shoah Foundation as well,
Stephen Smith. Yeah, we were lucky to have some. Not only are they knowledgeable, but some of them are just incredible orators. Stephen Smith, Michael Berenbaum, Timothy Snyder, Ben Ferenz, on and on. We were just really lucky, and it really helps bring the movie to life. And when you hear these points told to these leading thought experts in this various fields, it really lends itself to being really powerful and engaging.
Like I said, I mean, it's so educational in so many ways, on top of the emotional element of the ride.
Yeah, you mentioned education earlier. What I meant to add on to that is education is Ben Ferenz used to talk about this. There's like 3 pillars for the stool of avoiding genocide. There's law, international law. There's education and memorialization. And the other one is you got to make people care. I mean, knowledge alone, academia, courses, museums, they can make you interested and they can bring you in, but they can only bring you so far. You have to, as Mother Teresa put it, you have to associate with the one. When you think of the many, you do nothing. But when you think of the one, then you begin to embody that experience that they went through. So in the back half of the film, we make that point quite stridently that, you cannot change the mind until the heart is changed.
That's another element of the film I did love, is the Mother Teresa saying that you put up. A lot of great quotes throughout the film as well that I think are impactful for the story you're telling.
Well, that's again going back to the point of this tapestry. Quotes were just another element that could help tell the story and make a point. And Tim's knowledge of history was really valuable there, where he was able to pull out some great ones. And I think it really helps the narrative and really, allows the viewer to really be a part of the story and not feel like they're being preached to, but feel like they're learning along as they go. And we were very, very deliberate on that, how we established the pacing and the weaving together of the different stories, and incorporating these other genocides as well. It was all very intentional. I think both Tim and I and Lisa and the rest of our team were very happy with the outcome.
Well, the film has played at a number of festivals. a number. One really very important one in The Hague. Tim, will you tell us about that? I mean, when I honored the family that hid my family during the war, and we honored them at the Israeli consulate in The Hague.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, that's terrific. Here's the deal with The Hague. The festival, international festival at The Hague, is the shortest festival of all the festivals. It's literally 2 days long. It's in the Netherlands. So we are an official selection, and then they go to the next round of finalists to see whether you actually screen, and then you go to another round after that to see if you screen with a conversation. So I don't know that we're going to make it to the final stage of that, but we're honored to be in consideration. And in a festival like that, and a lot of the other festivals that were entered and we're waiting to hear back on now are very much human rights focused festivals. Ones that talk about social justice and in common humanity. And a lot of these have cropped up in the last several years. And I'll take any of those over a Sundance any day of the week, because it's filmmaking and storytelling with great intent and purpose. And I think right now, I mean, this very moment in history, maybe even in the last 24 hours,
correct,
there's nothing more important than emphasizing common humanity, because we've been through a pretty long stretch right now where dehumanization is a brand. It was a campaign brand, and it's quite possible in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, we're going to have to answer that question that Stephen Smith posed. If stranger's knocking on your door in the middle of the night and someone's trying to take them away, are you going to risk your own life to help them? And I'm not a big pro-cruelty guy, So I would tell you, first and foremost, right now, I would stand up. But it's scary. It's scary.
It is very scary. I think back to your class. Like, this film is so perfect for the class that you took in college.
Good point. I'll have to go to the University of Texas.
It really is. This weekend, you have a film festival, the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival, screening on Sunday, November 10th, correct?
Correct. 2 p.m.
Correct. 2 p.m. And are you doing a Q&A after?
Yeah, Mark's not making this one. This one will be Lisa and I.
Oh, okay.
We will be
Divide
there.
And conquer.
Divide and conquer. The link is up down below on YouTube. I know some viewers were asking where they can see it. They should go to forthelivingmovie.com, because you'll have it up when the film is released and where people can see it. Correct?
Yeah, on the website forthelivingmovie.com, there's a page with all the festivals and a link where you could buy tickets. There's the trailer, there's synopsis, the crew. There's a ton of information, all the press. This will be up there eventually, this chat. So yeah, that is the best source for finding out where the film is playing, when it will be distributed, et cetera, et cetera.
I just want to say, if you're in a situation right now as an American citizen and you're looking around you and you're wondering, where's the empathy gone? What is it about us as a people that has caused that innate human mechanism to break down? This is a film you need to see, because we get into the roots of that, but we also get into the other side, which is at least a conversation that might get us to a solution. But our discourse is really, really gotten uglier than ugly, and not only dehumanizing, but there's genocidal language used on social media all the time now. Some of it involves conflicts overseas, and some of it is just humans being human.
Our own American citizens.
Yeah, and it's bad stuff, but it's not normal. And Ben Ferenz, at 103, just passed away. One of the most important quotes from him in our film is that, out of everything he's seen, standing up to Nazis in a courtroom in Nuremberg, and then the rise and fall of communism, and genocide after genocide leading up to the 2000s, he said the era we're living through right now is the most dangerous he's ever seen. So that tells me a lot. Tells me that my gut is right about it, but it also, I have great reverence for that man and his perspective on history.
I mean, he's seen it all at 103. I
Yes.
mean, living through that period of time. Gentlemen, thank you for making this movie. Thank you for spending this time with me to talk about it. Really, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan, and thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Good luck with all the festivals. And the Fort Lauderdale International is November 10th, and the link is up on YouTube down below. Have a great evening, gents.
See y'all there.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Again, thank you to Mark Bennett and Tim Roper for being here to discuss this powerful new documentary. For more information, remember, forthethelivingmovie.com. As I leave you, remember, we all have choices to make in life. Speak up, do the hard thing, and let's all fight hate for good. I truly believe conversations like this can change the world around us. War, hate is not the answer. Feel free to share this episode with your friends and family. Until the next conversation, please stay safe.